And
Hi.
Hello. Good Friday, late morning.
Welcome to Keeping the Real in Real Estate. We've got a real topic for you today.
Yes.
That gets people very upset.
So, when buying a house, when is it yours? When have you bought it?
So
it's buyer's etiquette.
Yeah, buyer's etiquette. This kills deals.
Absolutely.
And we can talk about several horror stories as well.
Correct.
As you know, how to deal with different stages of the process and the proper etiquette when you're walking into someone else's home.
And how about proper etiquette of a Facebook Live? I'm Danielle Tully.
And I'm Ruth Sheehan.
And we're putting the real in real estate today.
So where should we start with this huge topic?
I think we start from the very beginning, right? It's showings. When you're trying to figure out if this house is yours. So it might be the first house you're in. It might be the 20th house you're in. You might have decided last week you were buying a house or 8 months ago. When you find that house that you want to call yours, it can transform you. It can make you feel better. The weight of the world's off of you, right? But you're going into these houses and you're trying to figure out if this is going to be your next house.
So and the seller's wondering if you're going to be the next owner of their house.
Correct.
So they make judgments based on your behavior, and we have had
calls
or heard of deals getting killed because of buyer behavior. So just the basic be a human etiquette. Show up when you say you're going to. Be on time for your appointment, or tell somebody that you're not going to be.
Don't walk into a home just 5, 10, 15 minutes past your scheduled time.
We almost had an agent and a buyer eaten by the dog when they walked in, thinking 15 minutes late was just fine.
Correct.
And I mean 15 minutes past the end of their scheduled time.
Correct. Or 15 minutes beforehand.
Exactly.
It's when you're scheduled, and sometimes things change, but letting people know.
And if your agent says, "Oh, it's no big deal," make sure they've checked with the listing agent to confirm that, because
absolutely
it's a big deal. You have an appointment, and that is the only legal time that you're allowed on that premises.
Correct.
So,
and when you go into there, we're in a highly technological age, right? The best
watched.
Yes. Assume you're being taped, at least at the front door, possibly inside, and being listened to.
And in Illinois, you have no expectation of privacy in someone else's home. So,
and they might not have put it up just for you. Maybe they don't even have the intention. Maybe it was just their regular security cameras.
Their Ring doorbell, their
everything.
Yeah.
I've gotten calls from sellers, and they get upset about a lot of things. It could be comments made. It could be kids touching things. Now, yes, you're allowed to go in. You can open up drawers. You can open up.
Well, not drawers of dressers, but drawers of
correct
things that go with the house. So that's the other thing. Things that go with the house, it's appropriate to look in. Things that are personal property, you do not touch.
Yes. So you can look in closets, you can open up drawers in kitchens and bathrooms to get an idea for space and things like that, and what might be behind something that would be yours. But yes, of course, not touching anything that isn't yours. And it does include, especially these days and age, children. If you have children with you and the sellers have children and there's toys around, this is not the time for your children to be picking things up, playing, driving, riding, whatever.
No.
It is
There's also lots of shiny things that could cost lots of money that children love to touch. So my advice is, if you have a child and you have a hand and they have a hand, that's a great connection to make.
And I know it's hard.
I know to keep them under physical control, but kids get excited, and we want them to get excited. It's a fun process. but that's still someone else's home you're walking into, and they don't want your kids touching their stuff.
Correct. Kids, even when it's not days like these, right? Kids.
Yeah, even without COVID.
And germs and stuff. Your kids might pick it up from them. Their kids might pick it up from you. It's just best to kind of just keep it. So maybe bring something for the kids to be entertained with, or yes, hold on to them, hold on here. You can rotate, one parent, if there's two parents, one parent goes in, checks out the house, comes out with the kids, while the kid's playing on the front lawn or something.
And really the best situation is to find somewhere else for the kids to be entertained while you're shopping for houses. I know that the temptation is to have them involved and help them feel like they're part of the decision making, but there's other ways to do that. And really, to be honest, it gets to be very boring and very stressful for kids to be walking in and out of houses, especially when they love a bedroom that ends up being not the one that you chose. So think about the disappointments of, you're really sure you want to take your kids' opinion into account, but the fact is you're probably not going to buy the wrong house just because your kid loved something in it. So, I hope not. So it's really best to leave them out of it until those decisions have been made. And then you can help them, make them feel like they're part of the process that goes on after that. But for God's sake, don't let them touch other people's stuff. I've seen kids, get on furniture.
That brings us to our next topic. I've recently seen not just kids. So inspections. So now you've picked if you've picked the house you want to buy. You've signed on that dotted line. The sellers have signed on that dotted line. And everybody's excited. The sellers are now wrapping up their time owning the home. And you're just starting to think about all the possibilities.
And this is a really weird period where we like to say the seller doesn't feel like they sold their house until they are sitting at the closing table, making those until the check is in their hands, honestly. And the buyer feels like they bought it as soon as they're under contract. So there's two parties feeling ownership, emotional ownership of the same house during this weird time.
Correct.
And that's where a lot of conflicts come in.
And it's great to be excited about your new house. Again, who knows how long you've been thinking about it, especially if it's something that checks most or all of your boxes. And obviously,
your mom and your dad and your cousin are all saying, "Can I see it? Can you get us in? Can you see if we can get another
correct.
Room? Can you just tell them that you have to measure for carpet? What if you can? Can't we just? But correct. I'm only in town for."
The answer is no.
The answer is no.
Sorry. The inspection is a couple days after, right? Within 5 days, business days, right? Of signing on that dotted line for the first time. And you are feeling like it, and you are excited, and you want mom and dad and Aunt Louise and whoever else to come and check it out. And what better time than the 2-hour inspection you're about to have? No. In fact, inspections are boring. 2 hours of sitting around a house that you do not own while you wait for the inspector to try to find something to give you a red flag for.
And let's talk from the inspector's point of view for a minute. They won't usually say this, but I think we can, right, Danielle? They have a process. They start where they start. They focus. They zero in. They look very closely at everything. They do not need somebody saying, "What's this switch for? Where does that go to?" At that moment, you can ask that, but at the appropriate time. Let the inspector go through the whole house. Don't distract him from his or her from their job that is to protect you. And that's what your presence does when you're there at that time. Now, inspectors are going to tell you they want you to be comfortable. They're going to say you can be there if you want to be. But I'm telling you, it is much better if you let them go through that first part of the process and then have them take you through and show you anything that is relevant. if you happen to spot something, or maybe we saw something at our showing that you want to get further insight to, you can ask those questions at that time. But if they're trying to inspect the underside of the roof and you're saying, what's this over here? What does this thingy do?
They might miss something.
Helpful. They might miss something.
They might go, oh, I was just looking at that. Look good. And lose track of where they're at. Now, I've got to say, the last 2 inspections I just went to earlier this month went so well. They were quick. And what happened is that my buyers came in the last maybe 30 minutes. So the inspector was able to get through it quickly. The buyers came, the inspector went this. My buyer was able to look at a couple things, maybe get that measurement for, oh, how big of a refrigerator can I get in, or something quickly, small, and use that same time. And once the inspector showed them this and showed them this and showed them this, they had a great idea of what the house was about, any pitfalls or safety issues, and then we were out. I have seen, in fact, part of the reason that we chose this topic for this week is recently this week that Ruth and I saw on another realtor was posting that somebody basically had a party during the inspection. There were people in the living room. Several people. In the living room, sitting on the couches, watching TV, feet up on furniture, eating their breakfast, drinking, not alcohol, but having drinks during this inspection, and basically living in somebody's house for a couple hours with people who are not the buyers, the relatives who wanted to come and see. That is not the time.
Relatives are perfectly welcome at your housewarming party. That's the time when they get to see the house.
Correct.
And they'll bring you a present. So that's even a better time anyway.
And you know what? That's distracting, right? When your inspector wants to tell you at the end what he or she saw, if you're trying to entertain the family, you're not going to get a full visualization.
Or a very well-meaning family from another state where they don't have basements is saying, what's this over here? And trying to, be the hero and save you from the mistake that they think you're making buying a house. It can all just end terribly. And if the seller is watching this whole thing, which they can be doing these days, then you're probably just going to get a cancellation letter the next day after you spent $500 on your inspection.
Absolutely. And then the last thing we kind of want to talk about. So we've listened. We haven't touched their things. Everything has gone so smoothly because we listened to our advice that it's a week before closing or 2 weeks before closing, and maybe the sellers got to know each other with the buyers, and they came up with doing a favor for one another, right? So maybe the buyers moved in a couple weeks early because you know what, the sellers are already somewhere else and the house is open anyway.
By the way, this would all be done with legal documentation, but that doesn't cover everything. That's
not necessarily, Ruth. I mean, the pre-possession.
You're aware of a situation where the buyer and seller did it on their own, which would be
yes, really and a couple different. So there have been times where somebody's allowed their garage to be utilized, and it went through the attorneys, but there's still potential, right? Who's responsible? The new buyers do not have insurance on this house yet. The sellers, that's not their stuff to cover. They didn't adjust their insurance to cover your furniture and your jewelry and stuff that are hanging out in their garage for just a couple days. Additionally, so I was just talking to one of my attorneys the other day, and he was talking about, and I don't think he had anything to personally do with this, but the buyers and sellers decided that it would be, the house is empty anyway, come on in. We're closing in a couple weeks, not a big deal. Buyers came in, redid the kitchen.
You mean they moved in, right?
They moved in.
Yeah.
And redid the kitchen because that was one of their to-do lists, and why not?
Like not the contact paper on the shelves, right? You mean they took out the cabinets and they put in new ones?
A new kitchen. And then the buyer lost his job. It was really nice. No, as it turns out, you need a job to pay for a mortgage. So the buyer, the no longer buyers, the no longer going to be owners, never were the owners of the home, now had no job and put a lot of money into a kitchen that wasn't theirs. So there was suing and there was trying to get money back. And the sellers went, we didn't ask for this. We didn't want it. We didn't do this. We don't owe you anything, which is true.
Yep.
It is true. So obviously
that's like for the nice new kitchen.
Oh, hey, I'm sure they sold that thing fast again. And probably for more money because they could market it. But, I know that's an extreme situation, but even the small little things, again, we understand the excitement, especially as buyers. Like, let's get in, let's do this, let's make it ours already.
Or like, I just want to get in ahead of time because then we can get a jump start. Then we want to put flooring in. So can we, get in ahead of time and get some of those things done? Or if they've moved out, can we just have the floors put in? God, no.
And you know what? I personally had buyers and sellers have a conversation because they wanted to get in. They asked so they reached out to the sellers and said, hey, can we just get in and do some measuring? And the sellers were like, sure. And everything was going well for a while. And then it was when they were in there, oh, are you going to, what about this table? What about this? Then they started negotiating things. And then, oh, well, we thought about it. No. And we changed our mind. And then you start getting bad blood between the buyers and sellers. And literally the day of closing, the seller, I was at the closing table and the seller was still packing up her home. So me and the seller's agent went to the home and kept packing for her and putting it away. And so I spent 3 hours while my buyers were at the closing table and upset because not only could they not close the table they thought was going to be, because now everything was off the table. Nobody was doing anything for anybody else. And so it really can have the smallest little ideas can really have
a situation in speaking of horror stories. And by the way, neither of these stories indicate that either of these outcomes are mine or Danielle's job. So don't think, okay, we can just do this and then our realtor will show up. There were extraordinary circumstances. And in this case, the seller, we had a senior seller who was moving to another state and had a lot of things in her great big house that she was not going to need at her destination. And her daughter put them for sale on the internet. And they got a response from someone who wanted to purchase a table or a hutch or something, big piece of furniture. And so they chatted. The seller gave the address for the purchaser of the table to come over and found that it was the purchaser of the home. So when the woman arrived to look at the table, she found, first of all, it fit perfectly because it was in the house that she's buying, and that there was a bunch of other stuff that they would also love to have. The seller said, I'm so excited that you're buying my home and that you're going to take such good care of it and that you also like my furniture. I will leave free of charge anything that you ask for. And the buyer said, we'll take it all. And the seller moved to another state. And then the buyer needed to be out of their home and said, can we move in ahead of time? Because we have nowhere else to go. And me, the listing agent, along with my seller's attorney and the seller and the buyer's agent, all said, that's a terrible idea. We understand that you would like to do that, but it's not a good choice. And I'm sorry, but you're going to have to find someplace else to stay for a few days. The buyer got so angry that she said, well, then now I don't want any of that furniture. You need to dispose of it. So me and my husband and my teenagers went over to the house. The seller's gone. And she had had such a good feeling about this transfer that we didn't want her to know about this horrible response from the buyers. So we went and took care of it. It was very difficult and unnecessary. And this is one of those, well, now you've ruined it for everyone. There's not going to be a lot of our sellers leaving anything for the buyers in the future.
Correct.
Because of how that person behaved.
Yes. Yeah. So, I mean, we get it. It's exciting time. We want you to be excited about buying your new home. And trust me, the sellers most of the time are excited about the opportunity to move on to their next chapter.
Yes.
But we try to keep things separate and clean and as easy as it can be for you, because anything can happen in a transaction, as you can hear week after week, anything does.
And so, as exciting as it is, it's all very emotional. And so it's really easy for, something to unintentionally turn.
Yes.
Just know that we're trying to protect our client. And if everyone just takes a step back, puts themselves in the shoes of the other person, and is respectful, most of these things are not going to be an issue.
Correct. So that, I think, covers a lot of it. I think they got the gist of, unfortunately, buyers, it's not yours until you're at the closing table with your check and you get it's been funded.
Exactly.
Thing. Even after you've signed everything, you're still sitting around twiddling your thumbs waiting for that lender most of the time, or the title company say it funded one way or another. The wire came in. So
one more quick horror story.
Oh,
a listing agent went over to check on the last couple things just before closing was starting, and found a group of men with heavy equipment in the backyard digging the new swimming pool.
Yes, don't schedule anything to be done to the house the day of the closing.
We're sorry that you have to wait.
Except for your electricity, yes, and the gas and all the other utilities that might need to be put on.
Yeah.
That is the only
sellers. Give an extra day on that. It's going to cost you 12 cents. Come on.
Yes, please.
I had electricity.
They're very quick these days.
I had electricity go out in the middle of a walkthrough.
Yep.
Once. Thank God we were there when it happened. We could have closed and they could have spent a few days before they moved in, and
correct,
air conditioning was off, the refrigerator would have been off. That could have been some yucky stuff to walk into.
Yep, absolutely. So,
all right.
As always, if you have any questions about becoming a buyer
or a seller,
a seller, yes, sure.
We'll make sure that your buyers are observing etiquette.
There you All right, sounds good. All right, until next Friday.
We're here. You can message us, call us, whatever.
Yeah.